All right, in the next 20 minutes, I'm going to show you exactly how to turn strangers into lifetime value. I'm going to be walking you through every single step, including the conversions, the KPIs, and the inputs that are required at every single stage so that you know exactly what you need to be doing and when you need to be doing it. So let's get straight into it. So to start off, in terms of the stranger to LTV operating system, it basically goes through these different stages. So we've got stranger, lead, qualified, booked, shown, client, activated, fulfilled, LTV. And these are going to be the stages that we're going through. And if you're running any kind of service-based business, this is the super important thing to kind of focus on, is that you don't need to focus on a million different processes, okay? You only need to get a certain few processes right, and that will take you a lot further than you can probably imagine. What you need to understand is that what you're dealing with probably isn't a lead problem, okay? It's a transition problem, because most people can go and get more leads if they really want to, okay? They can spend more on ads, they can create more content, they can do more outreach, and yet for some reason when they try and do more of that, it doesn't actually really make any difference to the business. And that's because where the drop-off happens isn't in the traffic, it's in everything that comes beyond that. And so attention is always achievable, calls are normally achievable, but consistent movement from stranger to booked to paying to fulfilled, retained, and expanded is not random activity, it is engineered structure. So as you can see, we can normally get attention, and that means that you have capability to do really well, okay? Because that is one of the hardest things, is actually just generating attention. The things that you're probably missing is conversion, okay? So things are failing throughout that life cycle, okay? So from stranger through to LTV, there's a lot of gaps. And so by the time that, that traffic has come in, you've lost half of it to different kind of leakages within the business. And so in order to fix that, what we need is structure. And the thing is, most founders, they'll only think in the 3 stages. Okay, so they'll look at traffic, book a call, close. And they forget about all the kind of minute details that come in between that actually lead to drop off and lead to you losing out on revenue because you haven't systemized the entire client lifecycle. So just to understand, a business does not grow because it generates more attention, okay? Because you can have the exact same attention, different systems, different setup, and convert way better than someone with more attention, okay? And it grows because it can reliably convert and fulfill for that attention, because that's what actually leads to lifetime value. And in terms of business, there is pretty much 2 main things that you need to worry about. CAC, which is cost of acquisition. How much does it cost you to acquire a customer? And lifetime value, how much is that customer worth to you over their entire lifetime? Okay, because that way you know, all right, I can spend this much to acquire a client because I know that on average they're worth this much, okay? So within this training, you're going to understand not how to just get more leads, which is what most people are really teaching, I guess, but actually how to build a full business journey so that every stage compounds to the next. And that way, when you do turn the traffic on, an analogy I like to use is think of it as a pipe with no leakages, okay? When you've got a pipe with no leakages, all you need to do to grow is simply turn the tap on and everything just flows through. Okay, so this is qualified calls, automated follow-up, predictable fulfillment, and then real-time visibility. So in terms of the different stages, this is how I would look at it. Okay, we've got strangers. So this is someone who has no idea who you are. There's no trust, there's no opt-in. That is the very first person. Okay, then we've got an engaged stranger. So someone who has consumed content, someone who has seen you somewhere, someone who has seen an ad, an outbound, engage with you in some form. Then we've got known lead. So they've maybe opted in, they've shown some kind of interest, and depending on the kind of funnel that you're running, this could be giving you an email and a phone number to a lead magnet. This could be simply commenting on a post. So the point is that we know who they are and they've engaged in our world, but we don't know that they're qualified. So then we have a qualified lead, and we understand that they have the right problem that we can solve, and they're the right fit in terms of affordability and kind of, business setup for who we're targeting. Qualified lead then turns into a booked call. A booked call is not the be-all, end-all. It needs to show up. So then it becomes a showed call, and we know that commitment is confirmed. Then we've got obviously our sales process, which leads to a closed client. Payment is collected. Onboarded client, they get assets, access, roadmap. Activated client, which means they've actually got their first win. Fulfilled for client, they've received and then we've got fulfilled client, which means the outcome has actually been delivered and they've actually received everything that they paid for, and we've delivered on that promise. Okay. Then the next step, we've got proof captured, referral/upsell, LTV maximized. So think about it like this in stages. You can see how it's mapped out. We've got stranger to qualified lead. That's one process. Then we've got qualified lead to a closed client. That is another process. Then we've got onboarded client to fulfilled client. That is another process, because we actually need to make sure that when we onboard them, there's a whole set of steps that ensure we get them to their desired outcome. Because that way, we can actually benefit as a business through the case studies, through the testimonial, through the expansion in LTV by getting referrals, upsells, LTV. And all of those are only possible if you've actually delivered the result. Because if you haven't, then there's no proof to capture. There's no reason they would refer anyone else. There's nothing to upsell them because it's unlikely they even have the funds to buy anything else. And it's unlikely that your LTV is maximized as a result. And so this, in terms of fulfillment, is something you've really got to think about. Now, if we're looking at the actual architecture, as I said, these are the kind of different stages that you've got to kind of think about. And so we're going to be walking through all of these because we've got stranger to attention, okay? Think about the things that actually go into this. A stranger, in order to get their attention, it's pattern interrupts and it's relevance, okay? It's putting things in front of them that they care about, okay? Then if we look at module 2, which we're going to go through, it's attention to lead. So how do we actually convert that attention into someone where we can actually reach out to and we get them in the CRM? So for example, attention could be content, it could be running paid ads, but how do we convert that into bringing a lead into a centralized place where we know who they are and we can now reach out to them in a different way? Now that we've got leads, we turn those into booked calls. So that's our qualification system. That's how we're setting them and booking them onto an appointment. Then once we've booked them, we've got a post-booking process. So our follow-ups, our post-booking page, everything that we're doing in order to basically engineer commitment and make sure that they show up. Once they've shown, we need to turn them into a client. So this is our kind of sales process, which we're also going to go through, which is, in essence, we take a diagnosis approach. We diagnose the problem. We prescribe the solution like a doctor. Okay. Then from client to activated, you've got to think about the kind of first 2 weeks of a client. How can I get them a quick win immediately? That's going to ensure that they stay. They're going to be motivated. They're going to get the result, and you're going to, benefit as a business as a result. We've then got activated to LTV. So once we've actually got them a good return, and they've benefited from our service, how can we now maximize the value of that person by getting proof, by expanding via upsells and asking for referrals? Then if we look at KPI operating dashboard, this is really making sure that you have visibility so that when we're looking at these different stages, from stranger to attention to lead to booked call to shown to client to activated to LTV, we've actually got to understand where is it breaking, what's going on in the business, what are our numbers, because then you can get to a point where things are predictable so that you can wake up one day and go, all right, we're going to spend this amount on ads this month. Due to our KPIs and maybe our numbers from last month, this is how much we expect to make. This is the kind of cash flow forecast. This is what we're going to aim for. These are the KPIs we're going to give to the setters, the sales team, etc. And business becomes predictable. So that leads us on to the final module, which, as I said, is where it breaks. And this is understanding what are the failure points, what are the most common ones, and how do we actually go about fixing them so that people do, as I said, just flow through this process automatically. So module 1, stranger to attention. Now, your job at this stage is not to sell, all right? You'll take a lot of people in business, they're trying to do it all at once, okay? So let's say you're creating a piece of content. You're trying to take a stranger to a fulfilled for client in one singular step, and that is why it's not working, okay? As I go through this, I want you to look at each of these processes on their own and just take them as they are and focus on them individually and identify which is the biggest bottleneck for me. How can I focus just on that? So in terms of stranger to attention, you don't need to sell. You just need to create pattern interruption and relevance, okay? Because relevant attention is what we need. We don't just want to get reach, okay? I could go viral tomorrow if I really wanted to by copying a text hook, using a video's overlay to edit and basically copying the proven structure word for word, bar for bar, clip for clip. And I could do that, but it wouldn't benefit the business at all because it's not relevant attention, okay? We need to pattern interrupt so that we can grab the attention of our target audience. And then we need to make sure that the topics we're talking about are relevant so that the people who stay and watch and actually engage with us are actually the type of people who may buy from us, okay? Otherwise, you're just making noise. So pretty much in terms of the required inputs, number 1, you need to understand your clear ICP. So as I said, specificity over reach, okay? We don't need millions of views. We just need some of the right views, okay? So get real clear on who are we targeting, what do they care about, what keeps them up at night, everything. Then we've got hooks, okay? This is what's going to grab people's attention in the first few seconds. So understand what kind of things can I say or kind of call out, what common beliefs can I completely disregard to actually get the attention of my target audience? What are the things that they are going to assume, and maybe how can I challenge those to keep them watching, kind of get them to think about a different take, okay? Then we've got pain articulation. Again, this comes down to the ICP, really understanding their pain and their problems and what they care about and what is stopping their business from growing. When you're marketing, forget about yourself and start thinking about the person you're targeting and thinking about what do they care about? How can I take my ego out of the equation and only talk about what they care about, create content for what would help them, okay? So symptoms, not features. This is a super key thing to think about. Don't be talking about the features of your offer or the features of your ICP. Talk about the symptoms of the problem and the reason that it's a problem, okay? Because, for example, if you just say XYZ is a problem, no one cares. If you say XYZ is a problem and it's meaning that you cannot achieve your goals, you cannot close clients, you cannot get more leads, you can't get any views in your content, now they can understand the pain of that problem and why it actually matters and why they maybe need to solve it. Okay, then we need to put together a channel-specific content strategy. So, for example, if you're targeting 60-year-old men, don't go posting on TikTok. You're not going to find any of them. Okay, so really just think about where does my ICP hang out and how can I put myself in front of them with the best chance of reaching them? And so figure out what core channels am I going to start on. Start on one, master that, then expand into multi-channel. Okay, then we've got single high clarity CTA. So figure out where am I pushing people to? Have one clear direction in terms of where I want them to go. Again, start with one, prove that it converts, then expand. Okay, next one, offer, message, alignment. Figure out what is our offer, who do we help, how do we help them, what's the process, why should they care? And then figure out how can I communicate that message in a way that isn't necessarily salesy, but more so unique to myself. Because when you have a unique methodology, philosophy, or just a unique way of presenting your offer, you're now one of a kind and people can't compete with you, right? Because no one can replicate what you're doing because it's so unique and it's specific to your business, okay? And that means there is no competition. All right, next one is consistent distribution. So figure out what are the easiest, lowest friction ways for me to create content. How can I maybe just document what I'm already doing? For example, right now I'm going through a presentation. All I have to do is turn the camera on. There's not high friction between me creating content because I'm just talking about what I talk about all day. Okay, so figure out what is easy for me to create and then what's the easiest way for me to distribute that. And how can I, as I said, once you've mastered one channel, repurpose one winning idea, so one core concept that I want to talk about and turn it into an Instagram post, a LinkedIn post, a cold email, a newsletter, every single piece of content that you can so that you can maximize the reach of that message. Okay, once we have an idea of those inputs, these are the core things that you need to focus on in terms of mastering module 1. Then you've got to actually understand what are the type of content assets that I want to create. So in terms of converting people, it's really around awareness. Okay, so in terms of taking people from stranger to, oh, I could actually buy from this person, you've got to take them through the awareness stages. So it's completely unaware, they're a stranger. Then they become problem aware. Okay, then they become solution aware, then they become offer aware. And as long as they associate all of that with you, and you're the one who taught them about the problem, you're the one who taught them about the solution, and then you're the one who presented the offer that actually provided that solution, they're now going to go for you. And so in terms of content, number one, you want founder-led educational content. So you want people to buy into the founder. This is the key thing in terms of personal branding in 2026, is that people will buy from people they like, know, and trust. And so some have to be founder-led so that people can actually understand who they're buying from and the business they're buying into. Next one is going to be problem aware. These are great for paid ads as well, actually calling out the issues that people are facing and making them aware of them. If you've ever seen an ad where someone goes, you're a marketing agency owner, stuck below 10K a month, struggling to post content, spamming cold DMs. Okay, if you've ever seen something like that, and I'm sure you have if you're watching this video, it's because people are trying to make you problem aware, okay? They're trying to make you aware of the issues that you're solving so that when they present a solution, you actually care. And likewise, when they present the offer, you understand the problem that it solves and again, can justify buying it. Okay, next one's lead magnets. So how can we, entice our target audience by giving away things for free in return for an email or a phone number that are super valuable to them. Free trainings are great. Again, great way to build trust, exhibit A. And then we've got profile funnel and retargeting. So actually tracking everyone who visits any kind of profile that you have and then retargeting them with ads. Really what you're doing is if you're posting any type of content, you want to be tracking the people that then actually go and look around your profile, click on your landing page, watch some of your content for 95% of the video, because those are the people who actually have intent. They are interested. Otherwise, why would they be looking around? It's like, think about when you're in a shop. Think of any social profile as a shop. When they walk in and look around, they've been looking around for an hour. The shopkeeper is obviously going to go up to them and be like, is there anything I can help you with? Because they have intent. We do the same online by tracking people on our profile and retargeting them with ads that are normally credibility, social proof to actually push them over the line. So if we're looking at the KPIs, let's say profile visit, 1 to 5% of viewers actually end up visiting your profile. They scroll and then they're like, let me actually go have a look. All right, 10 to 30% actually click a link. If you've got an optimized profile and you've got a clear CTA and one place for them to go, again, 10 to 30% of them are actually going to click. If we're looking at a paid click-through rate, so in terms of paid traffic, on average, you're looking around 1.5 to 4%, and that is very much dependent on who you are targeting. These are general numbers, just so you have an understanding of the KPIs you should be tracking. They will look different depending on your target market. And so, big caveat with everything I go through today, do not think that these numbers are the exact only way to scale, and you have to have these numbers, otherwise your business will fail. It is different for every single business. These are examples so that you can benchmark against them, but they will be different depending on your niche. And so the best thing to compare against is not really anyone else, but compare against your own business month on month, because that's who you're challenging, okay? So then if we look at landing page views, of the people that click through, let's say 70, 90% land on the page and actually look through, and then maybe 2 to 8% actually view, okay? So these different KPIs we can track for, and that will give you an understanding of how do people go from visit, so attention, to kind of engage, which is this first stage. So from stranger to attention, you just got to worry about viewer to profile, or profile to link and click, or you've got paid click-through rate, you've got landing page view rate, or you've got save/share rate. These are pretty much all of them for the most part in terms of funnels that you're likely running at the moment, okay? So if we look at signal amplifiers that kind of encourage that you're doing the right thing, ICP level clarity in every message. Every single video should clearly identify this is who it's for, and also turn away who it's not for, okay? Contrarian truth, these are going to really help in terms of, as I said, if you challenge the status quo and you challenge what people already believe, you're now a thought leader, and they're going to look at what you have to say as maybe something better than the traditional kind of assumptions, okay? And then again, educational authority, demonstrate before asserting, okay? Whole reason I'm making this video is so that I can demonstrate I know what I'm talking about instead of just telling you that I do. Okay, you can watch and you can judge for yourself. All right, so moving on from stranger to attention onto the next module. Now that we understand how we can turn a stranger into attention and actually have that person ready to hear from us, how do we turn that attention into a lead? All right, and that takes us on to module 2, which is turning attention into leads. So this is where a stranger becomes known. So they opt in, they DM us, they reply, or they submit some kind of lead form. Now a lead is only valuable if the system knows exactly what to do with them next. And so the key is that we have a predictable system beyond them just opting in, and we know exactly how we're interacting when they show that kind of interest. And so if we look at the kind of entry points, if we look at the common funnels, if we're looking at social media or we're running ads, we've got a comment CTA, so they comment a keyword for a kind of lead magnet. We've got DM the keyword, which is normally just an inbound trigger to work with us. We've got free trainings, we've got lead magnets. For example, a free training, you might have a link to that within your bio. And again, we can push people there and we can track them again. We've got a VSL page, we've got a newsletter, we've got an application, we've got kind of diagnostic like a discovery call, depending on how your funnel works. But again, we want to be tagging them and understanding, number one, where did they come from? So the source, okay? Number two, we want to understand how aware are they? So what have they seen already? And this is why it's important to track every single stage in terms of from the attention to the lead, because we also want to understand with the leads that we do have, how high quality are they? What kind of stuff do we need to cover? How aware are they? What objections might they still have? How qualified are they? And that's going to help us in our sales process, okay? We want to know their last action. So what did they do last? We want to know what they're interested in terms of offer. So for example, if they came in through a comment CTA that was solving a specific problem, we know that that is what they need help with. And so we should kind of focus our messaging on that in terms of the follow-up. And again, we want to know how qualified they are. If you have different service offerings and you have different levels of service, you would want to know who can afford what so that you pitch the right thing. You also want to know next due in terms of, do we need to follow up with them at a certain time? When are they hopping on a call? What is the kind of next step for them? So again, looking at the KPIs that we should be looking at. All right, we've got cold traffic conversion, okay, 15 to 35% in terms of like conversion from, again, remember this is attention to lead. So this is, you've shown some kind of attention. That means let's say 15% of all the people that have viewed your video actually comment the CTA. Sounds about right, okay? Warm traffic conversion in terms of if you're targeting warm people, 30 to 60%. Again, these are just benchmarks. Don't take them as the only source of truth. Application page conversion, so understanding when people land on your landing page and they've gone from attention, what is the conversion of actually turning them into a lead and submitting the lead form or booking a call? If you DM the keyword, open rate, so this is understanding when someone DMs that keyword, well, again, when we respond, are they actually opening it? Are they actually engaging in the conversation? I would say probably for the most part, you're probably sat in the middle there. I'd say 70% of the time, if someone DMs us a keyword, they're actually going to respond when we then engage. Very rarely does someone DM us the keyword and then disappear. Okay. And again, DM conversation rate. This basically just means out of the people we reach out to, how many actually respond. 25 to 50%, pretty normal. Again, we're kind of currently at around 50% in terms of out of the people we reach out to, around 50% of them reply. 10% booking rate as well, if you're curious. Okay, so if we look at the stage killers, these are going to be the things that are actually stopping you from consistently moving them through the stages. So we've got no follow-up after opt-in. We've got no source tracking. Okay, we've got generic lead magnets, which are disconnected from the offer, and no what next sequence. Okay, and the reason these kill your leads is because, for example, if we have no follow-up after opt-in, then we are not engaging with that intent. Okay, and if you've seen the study, I think it's if you follow up with someone within 30 seconds of them showing intent, in other words, of them opting in, okay, you increase your chances of closing them by about 400%. Okay, and so simply just by not following up, you're losing about 4x in revenue. Okay. Then when it comes to source tracking, if you're not tracking where your leads are coming from, then how are you going to know what to double down on? You're pretty much guessing. And a lot of the times people do this. They go, well, I think this is working really well, so let's focus more on that. And it's like, if you say I think, that means that you don't know. Okay, and that means there is going to be no predictability, and you might go wrong for a long time without having any idea of why. Okay. And then again, generic lead magnet, there is no point in a lead magnet if it's not connected to your offer, because who are you going to attract with the magnet? You're going to attract people who aren't interested in your offer. And so they have to be very closely intertwined. Your lead magnet should in essence be a piece of your offer. Okay. And that way you're really going to get the right people. Now, moving on, let's just close that. On to the next step. Now we're going from lead to qualified and lead to booked. So we've got leads. Okay, we've got people who have shown intent. How do we qualify them? How do we turn them into booked calls? Okay, so this is where most businesses leak money, because leads are collected and then they're abandoned. Okay, most founders do not need more leads. They need fewer leads exiting through the middle. So this is what I mean in terms of the drop off. Think of it as a pipe. You turn the tap on, they go through, and then half of them just fall down to the floor because you haven't tightened things up. So for example, like I know tons of people who have just lead lists where they ran an ad and they have a lead list of like 300 phone numbers and emails, and they're just sat in a list waiting to be called. And it's like, oh, I haven't actually contacted them, need to follow up with them. They should be reached out to immediately when they show intent. Otherwise, you're just wasting spend, you're wasting input, because you're not actually, focusing your time and attention on the stuff that does come through. And I think a nice way to look at it is look at your offer price. Let's say your offer's worth 5K. Okay, you want to look at every single one of those opt-ins as a potential for $5,000. Okay. And if you can't be bothered to send a message or follow up for $5,000, then you don't care enough about your business. And likewise, if you've got an appointment setting team in place, this could be, let's say you're paying 5% in commission. Guys, this could be £250 for you. And all you have to do is send a message and follow up with them quickly. You're telling me you don't care enough to do that. Okay. So that's something that you want to think about. Now, moving into it. So in terms of CRM pipeline stages, okay, in terms of tracking your leads through the progress, okay, I like to track from all the way from engagement all the way to the very end, and we have systems that allow us to do that. Now, in terms of going from lead to booked call, it's really just these processes. So we've got new lead. What do we want to happen? Okay, we want to assign the owner. Who is responsible for that lead? Who needs to follow up with them? Who needs to keep, making sure that they're qualified? Who needs to manage that? Okay, contact attempted. Okay, again, less than 5 minutes. I would argue less than a minute, to be honest, ideally. All right, less than 5 minutes is like maximum. Okay, so again, contact attempted. When that new lead comes in, someone is assigned and they're now going to contact them. Okay, engaged. This means that they have responded. The conversation is open, and this is literally what our pipeline looks like, just so you know I'm not practicing it but not preaching it. These are our stages that we use. Okay, then we want to qualify them. So within the conversation, you should have a script that basically qualifies them. For us, we use questions like, what is it you do for work? How long have you been doing that for? This is going to gauge what they do. We can estimate how much they make from that. We also understand how long have you been doing that. If it's only been a month, they're probably not making much from it. If they've been doing it 10 years, they at least are making some kind of money in order to survive. Okay, and so you have some kind of script that qualifies them. You also want to have qualification through the booking form so that you're understanding when they do book, how much do they make? How much do they want to make? What do they care about? What type of business do they run, if assuming you're going B2B? Regardless, you need to be checking the qualification. Then we've got call invited. So in other words, we've sent the booking link. Okay, this way you can track what is the conversion from sending the booking link to the call booked. And the thing that's going to dictate that is the questions that you have on the form, how they position you. Are you qualifying them? Are you kind of reinforcing commitment and the idea of you bringing results? And that's what's going to actually lead to bookings. When they've booked the call, we've then got confirm and remind. So this is where we have our post-booking process. So we've got follow-ups, we've got post-booking page, etc. And then the only things that can happen after that are they either no-show, show up, or we put them into nurture. So for example, if they don't show up, we then are going to have a recovery sequence to basically follow up with them. This is via email, SMS, Instagram as well, wherever they came from, to actually make sure that they rebook and we get them on the call. A lot of people, they don't, they get no-shows and then never even bother reaching back out to them. Maybe that person was super interested, but you just didn't even care enough to find them another time because they got busy, okay? Or something came up and they couldn't get around to it. They had to rush into hospital. They didn't have time to follow up with you. And you're there sat on your high horse going, oh, this person just didn't no-show. They must not have cared. Maybe they really did care, but you didn't, okay? And because you didn't, they now don't. Okay, and so in terms of following up and having a recovery sequence for no-shows, I can't stress the importance because you're probably missing out on, let's say, 20% no-show. Okay, maybe half of those people would have actually rebooked. You're now missing out on 10% of your revenue simply just by not bothering. Okay, and then we've got the nurture pool. So for example, if someone books but doesn't close, we again don't want to forget about them. You don't want to burn the bridge and trying to force them over the edge. If you can't get them through your standard sales process, simply put them back into your nurture sequence. Maybe they weren't aware enough, they hadn't seen enough credibility. And if you put that in front of them for the next couple months, maybe they'll come back around. Okay, so those are the different stages. Then if we're looking at KPI benchmarks, again, this is what you need to be tracking. What percentage of leads result in a conversation? Okay, what percentage of the conversation is actually qualified? Again, this is quite important. I would say for the most part, you shouldn't be starting conversations with people who don't seem qualified. That's something that I'm always pushing with our sales team is don't bother reaching out if they aren't qualified. You should do some of the qualification before even starting that conversation. Then qualified to booked, I would say it's probably around like 10 to 20% booking rate. I would say in terms of the qualified conversations we have, I think we're at 16% for last March. In terms of qualified conversation to booked call, that's pretty normal, that's pretty good. 10% on average across everything is the standard across all of our clients. So aim for that in terms of booking rate. Then we've got obviously raw lead to book. You're looking at the conversion end to end. Okay, and obviously it's source quality dependent. Okay. And now the reason that these numbers are kind of useful is if we look at the data that it gives us, and this is why we track our numbers. It's not just for the sake of us saying this is our conversion rate. It's for the sake of us understanding how we make our decisions and also understanding where is drop-off happening, okay? So for example, if your raw lead to booking rate is pretty low, but your qualified lead to booking rate is pretty high, then it's not actually a problem with your setters, okay? Their process is fine. It's actually a problem with the lead quality, and that's what you need to adjust. Whereas a lot of people will start blaming the setter, saying you suck because your booking rate has gone down, when that's not actually the case, because this is the conversion you need to be looking at. It's actually a problem with the leads, because when the leads are high quality, your setters are performing, if the numbers show that, okay? And again, if you've got a qualified conversation but the booking is low, then it's probably an issue with the qualification script, right? Or it's an issue with the positioning, or it's an issue with the CTA, right? And we don't have a clear place for them to go, okay? So as mentioned, you want to track booking rate by segment. So as mentioned, you want to track booking rate segmented by stage. So you don't want to do it in aggregate, okay? You don't want to do it across the entire board because then you're missing different parts of the equation, right? Isolation reveals the actual failure point. By breaking it down into these different stages and by breaking it down into these KPIs, we can see what's happening in between each stage, as I mentioned, right? You don't want to look at lead to client and just focus on that because you're missing different parts of the puzzle. You need to look at what happens in between each stage and where are people falling off, and that's what you then fix. Okay, moving on to module 4. We're now looking at a booked call to a call showing up. Okay, and now this is something I can't stress enough because a booked call is not pipeline success. A show is pipeline success to an extent, and a close is obviously full success, all right? Everything before that is provisional. Booking is intent, a show is commitment. Plenty of people book calls, lots of people don't show up to them, lots of people don't actually care and never cared about it at all. And so we're gonna go through the full booking rate. So in terms of improving your show rate and making sure that for the majority, people actually show up. Right now, our show rate, I want to say it's 100% for this month. We haven't had a single no-show. I think across the last year, it's probably around 85, 90%. Every now and then, there will be people who don't show up, and that's part of the game, okay? Cost of doing business. But for the most part, if you implement these kind of systems, then you will increase your show rate to at least over 80%. So number one, we've got confirmation and email calendar invite. So immediately as someone's booked, we send them an email, we take them to a post-booking page, and then they get a calendar invite as well. Now, on the post-booking page, let's see if I can actually just show you my post-booking page now. So if you look at this post-booking page, we have, you've made a smart decision, founder, your strategy session is confirmed. Watch the video below in full before moving through the rest of the page. Now, as you can see, we have a full video which pretty much explains what the call is going to be about. We pre-frame it. I explain that you need to be on time. I explain the reason for the call, what we're going to talk about, and how it's going to go. That sets the expectation, okay, and has people in a set frame of mind ahead of the call, right? We make sure they go through the kind of steps, they understand how everything works. We then get them to look at results, okay, which is kind of the third step, because we want them to see the results as much as possible. We then make sure people confirm our call, okay, and we literally have this here that says, check your calendar invite, you'll get a message like this. The reason this works a treat, and I'm not even joking, I get emails all the time saying, so-and-so has responded yes to the call, or so-and-so has confirmed the call. And it's because we put this in place so that they go check their email and then click, I know the sender, and actually add it. This also improves our email deliverability over time. So little hack for you there. We also tell them you're going to unlock a free gift. So if you show up, you're actually going to get a reward for it. Okay. And you're going to leave with something valuable regardless. Then we have the results. So we have testimonials, a bunch of case studies, YouTube videos that people can watch. Then we have common questions, and we have FAQs, and we're pre-handling different objections. So every single time I get an objection that we can't handle or we can't get around, that then gets added to the FAQs, okay? Because we want to cover that beforehand. And again, more YouTube videos trying to get people as educated as possible. So this is where we're redirecting them. And then from there, it's pretty much calendar invites and emails. Now, you'll see the kind of different things. Pre-call authority asset, we want to be sending case studies, testimonials, or mechanism videos. Okay, so when someone has booked a call, my goal is before they show up on the call with myself, how can I make them understand as much about what we do and why it matters as possible, and pre-handle any objections that they might have, and also put as much social proof, case studies, testimonials in front of them as possible. So within the emails that we send to them, it's almost always a redirect to a YouTube video or a testimonial or a case study. So we're saying, hey, ahead of our call, and you can go book a call with myself right now if you want to go test out our post-booking process, and you'll see it live in the flesh. We're basically getting you to go and look at our YouTube, and we're saying, check this out before our call. It will make our conversation even better. Then in terms of SMS reminders, the only goal of those is, again, to push people to the YouTube. So we go, hey, just dropped you an email, thought it might be something worth you looking at before our call. Speak soon. Okay. All of this means that the people who show up to our call are educated, understand what we do, and have already seen results. Okay. And that's the key. Now, you can also implement, if you want to, we don't use it, but you can implement a diagnostic form. If you're doing, for example, custom AI solutions, or you're doing custom audits, or you're doing, you're a full stack agency, for example, these can be very useful in terms of actually getting a bunch of pain points before the call. Okay. We run a kind of one call close system, so we don't need to do this. You need to have something like this in terms of a booking form, obviously, to understand some kind of information. But within the email follow-up sequence, you can also get them to submit some kind of more information ahead of the call, which also gives you more to work with when it comes to the sales call. Okay, and again, SMS and email reminder stack, we do day before, same day, 10 minutes prior. We also do just the entire period after they booked a call, pretty much every other day. Then we've got no-show recovery workflows. So again, if someone doesn't respond, we have a set of workflows that we add them to: emails, SMS, Instagram, follow-up, and we get them to rebook. Okay. Now, the key with this is that it actually completely reduces the idea of people showing up and having no idea, because I find that by having this kind of process in place, if I get a call cancelled, it's actually a good thing, okay, because it means that they don't align with what I do. Okay, and we've had calls come through and it's like, I've had a look over everything you do. I don't think this is what we're looking for. Great. Now, a lot of people might think, oh no, we've lost a call. It's like, no, I've just got an hour back that I would have wasted because this person isn't the type of person that I can help, clearly, because I've ran them through everything I've done before the call. It's not for them. I'm now not wasting my time. Okay, and this means the people that I do show up with, my close rate is way higher and my show rate's massive, because the people who are going through this process, reading everything, going through everything, watching everything, and still show up, that means they really care and they're actually committed. Okay, now in terms of amplifiers and things that you can do to increase your booking rate even further and making sure people show up, one is shorter booking windows. So again, you want to have maximum people can book maybe 5 days in advance. Anything more than that, you're going to lose intent. Again, we want to book them in when they know that they have the problem, when they are ready to go. So next couple days is ideal. Okay, we then obviously pre-call homework, having them to go and do stuff before the call. The more action you can have someone take on behalf of yourself before working with you, the more likely they are to work with you. Okay. So if we can get them to go away and complete a form, and we can get them to go away and watch your video, that's a sign of intent. Because if they can't be bothered to watch a 5-minute video before hopping on a call with me, why are they going to pay me thousands of pounds when they do hop on a call with me? They're not. Okay. Then friction where needed. This is to filter low intent leads. So again, a lot of people, it's like, why would I add a 5-minute form? They're now going to have to complete that. Especially if you're targeting high ticket and you're targeting a sophisticated market like we are, right? You have to add friction. Otherwise, you're going to deal with people who just don't care enough. And they're not the type of people I want to work with. Okay. And so you need to filter those people out by adding friction where it makes sense and adding more forms and more steps to actually hop on a call with me. Because then the people who do go through that are really going to care, and you can tell that they actually have the intent to work with me. Otherwise, they wouldn't have taken the time. And also, it makes your sales rate go up, your close rate, sorry, because it's kind of that pre-commitment. They've already committed and gone through this kind of steps to show up to the call. Think of it as like Build-A-Bear. If you go through a full Build-A-Bear and you've spent all this time putting all this stuff together, it's then a lot harder for you to not buy because you've already made the effort. Likewise with a sales call, the more we can get them to do beforehand, the more likely they are to close. Okay, in terms of benchmarks, book to show rate, I'd say 60 to 85%. It's about right. It's normally average. It does depend where you're running, well, where you're getting your leads from. Content normally higher, paid ads to cold traffic lower, paid ads to warm traffic obviously pretty high as well. And so for the most part, we're targeting like 85% because most of our stuff comes through content. If you're running cold traffic, you should still be targeting around 70% as well. If you've got a really good process, you should still kind of be at that level. And then pre-call form completion, in terms of, I would think of this as like pre-call steps completion in terms of the steps of people going actually through it, 40 to 80% about right. I would say about 50% of the people that we actually speak to have gone through the pre-call assets. They have confirmed their call. They've responded to some of the emails very often as well. And then, yeah, no-show is going to be, the other side of that, which is about 10 to 20% on average. Again, you want to reschedule. Oh, in fact, this is no-show to rescheduled. Again, yeah, this is about right. I would actually argue around 50%. You can get a lot of your no-shows to rebook just by putting in a little bit of effort. And so with your next no-show, just a little challenge for you, actually go and follow up with them relentlessly and try and get them to rebook. Literally over the last day, I think I've seen in my DMs, we've had people rebook who hadn't booked originally. Sometimes all it takes is a little nudge. Okay. So if we look at the stage killers and the things that are really going to break and lead to drop off throughout this stage, it's thanks, see you then, and then no reminders, no pre-frame, and booking too far in advance. So for example, if you just have a message that says thanks, see you then, and then someone books in 2 weeks later and they don't hear anything from you in that meantime, do you think they're going to show up? No. If you were meeting with a mate and you arranged it 2 weeks ago and you said, great, let's do something on the 21st, and then you didn't speak once for the next 2 weeks and you just showed up to that venue, do you think they'd be there? I'll leave it at that. Okay, next thing, module 5, shown to client. So this is the system from marketing to sales. But sales here is diagnosis, not pressure. Now, this is going to be contrary to a lot of people in the online space, but I don't like high pressure sales and it doesn't work for my sophisticated market. I find a lot of the time, sometimes people do need to go and speak to someone. They do need a little bit of reassurance, so they need a little bit more time. Okay, and that's not always an issue. The key is that you need to be able to identify within a sales call whether the objection is legit or whether the objection is just a smoke screen that they're putting in front of your face and they're actually just nervous to make the decision. And so this isn't to say don't handle objections. You need to handle objections, but only when it's right for them. Little example that I had a client, Paul. Okay, we originally hopped on a call, I want to say maybe 5 months ago now. Well, we initially hopped on a call, we went through everything and it was a great fit. And he said, I'd love to go ahead. This sounds great. His honeymoon was, I think, a week later and he was away for a month. Now, do you think it would have been a good idea for me to pressure him and say, I don't think that's the right decision. I don't think you should wait till after your honeymoon. I personally think that's ridiculous because I remember him saying it and I said to myself, yep, no, that's completely fair enough. I would probably want you to wait until you've done your honeymoon before we started working together so that I know you're committed and know that you're going to have the time. Now, me as being a good service provider and actually being able to benefit my client, I would be doing him a disservice if I forced him and, objection handled him to the point where he did come through and went ahead, even though he was going to be super busy and probably not thinking about the business for the next month because he'd just got married. And so I didn't handle that objection. And what's really funny is that about a couple months later, after the honeymoon, he came straight back to me, he DM'd me, we hopped on a call and we got started straight away and he paid in full. Okay, and so That should show you pretty clear as day. It doesn't mean that we always need to be high pressure just because someone says now is not the right time. Occasionally, now isn't the right time. And if you try and force them over the end, I can promise you they're never coming back to you, and they're going to come back to someone like me and work with myself because I'm actually appreciative of the position that they're in, and I actually care about the fact that I want to make sure this is the right time for you so that we get you the best result possible, because that's what benefits my business, is getting you a great case study and then posting it on my YouTube, like some of the ones that you can probably see on the screen now. And that is what grows the business. And so that's what we focus on. Okay. And so the key is that they buy because they understand the mechanism and they trust the transition. Okay. That is probably the core premise of it. So in terms of diagnostic call architecture, this is the kind of framework that we use. Okay, a great framework to think of is you're a doctor. So you sit back, you listen to their problems, you diagnose those problems and explain them back to the prospect, and then you recommend a solution. And think about it like this: have you ever gone into the doctors? They've sat there, they've listened to all your problems, they've gone, yep, seen this all before. This is what it is. This is what caused it. Here's what I'd recommend as a solution. Have you ever gone into the doctors, had that happen and gone, oh, actually, I need to think about it. Oh, let me go to the doctors down the street. No, you haven't. Okay, and so adapt that approach when it comes to sales because it works very well. So number one, we're looking at context and current state. Where are they now? And when it comes to discovery, a lot of people ask questions for the sake of it. Okay, you don't need to. All right, you need to ask questions that, again, lead to your offer. So a great frame that I use is look at your deliverables and go, what is a question that I can ask that exposes the pain that this deliverable solves? And then you go through your deliverables, and that gives you a list of discovery questions where the information that you're actually going to get from the person directly relates to your offer. And that's what's going to make your pitch actually stand out, and it's going to mean they care, right? And so number one, we want to understand where they are. Then we look at their desired state, where they need to be. Then we look at what's stopping them. In other words, what's the gap in there? What is the gap between where you are right now and where you want to be? Okay, so what is obstructing them? We then want to look at the cost of staying the same. So this is the cost of inaction, very powerful kind of thought process in sales, is how can we get them to think about what is going to be the issue of you continuing to operate this way? What is that going to lead to? Okay, think about yourself 5 years down the line. Where are you going to be if you keep doing things like this? Okay, because people, when it comes to wasting time, money isn't even a concern. Time always comes before in terms of people's priorities, and so you need to play into that. Okay, then we've got mechanism and system design. So obviously you run them through the solution. And I think the key here is that you don't just run them through a solution and say, this is what we do. Okay, not once do I ever, bear in mind, we provide all our clients a range of softwares. I never share my screen and show softwares for the most part. Okay, every now and then, maybe I'll show you a little something, right? But for the most part, we don't need to because people don't care. Okay, people care about very few things, which is their desired result. Okay, and so my job as a salesman is to run them through my offer, but explain what that means for them and why they should care. Because the last thing you want someone in there to be thinking in their head is looking at your offer as you're running them through all these complex mechanisms and features and the way that you deliver it. And they're just sat there thinking, yeah, but why should I care? What does that mean for me? And so what I will always do is run through the solution in their context. So I'll take what they've given me within the discovery and I'll say, so John, I know that you mentioned that you were kind of struggling with your kind of lead flow management at the moment, and it was quite a manual process and you didn't have clarity on numbers. And a lot of our clients actually dealt with the same. And so one of the first things that we implement is XYZ so that you never have to worry about lead management again. Okay. And now I've taken it from a random feature and now I've explained what it would mean for him, why he should care, and the benefit that he's going to see because of it. Okay. And now he can probably actually understand why he would buy it. Then we've got fit and delivery structure. So actually understanding, is this a good fit for you? We're confirming commitment. Okay. So before I talk about price, I'm actually understanding, is this something that you think would benefit for you? And then when they say yes, I go, okay, why is that? And I really confirm, this is why you want it. This is the benefit. Let's make sure, why is it a good fit for you? They'll tell you. And now that we have commitment, objection handling becomes a lot easier. So then we run through the options. In my case, I like to give an either or instead of a yes or no. Okay, and then it's just the decision, the next step. Okay, you got to be confident, you got to be specific, and you got to be clear. Okay, a lot of what gets people over the line is clarity. Very hard for us as humans to buy something that we don't exactly know what it is. Okay, when it's a, toothbrush on the shelf, there's no doubt, we know exactly what it does, we know exactly what it's going to do for us, and so we just buy it. And there's no hesitancy, okay, because we don't even think about it, because there's clarity. Same thing if you're selling any kind of service online, is you need to be super crystal clear what it is you're delivering and what the other person is going to get. And in terms of key questions, I think one that a lot of people miss is what are the next steps? Because if someone wants that clarity, the question they will ask you is, okay, so what are the next steps? And really what they're asking is, when I pay you this money, what are you going to go away and do? What am I actually going to get? What's going to happen? And that's the clarity that they often need. And I would say probably 90% of my clients end up coming through after I give them a super crystal clear answer to what are the next steps, because I know my onboarding process literally to the T. Okay. And now if we're looking at KPIs, all right, show to close. All right, 20 to 50%, I would say, again, depending on where your leads are coming from. But if you've got anything less than a 20% close rate, then either your pricing is wrong, your positioning is wrong, or your sales process as a whole is dreadful. If you're following this and you're speaking to qualified people who are the right people, 30% I would say is a benchmark to aim for, okay? Then proposal to close as well. If you're doing, let's say, proposals and you're sending them over, I would say 25 to 30%. It should actually be pretty similar in terms of a cool close. A proposal is going to be the same thing. And then sales cycle in terms of when people come in to when they close. There is no target for this in terms of it's going to be different depending on the business, what you're selling, how long your sales cycle is. But I think what's important to know is that you want to understand it and you want to know what your sales cycle is. Normally you want to do everything within 30 days because for the most part, if you're using credit or you want to scale via ads, everything's normally done on a 30-day time frame. And so if you can get a client to cover your costs over 30 days, you're normally pretty good. Okay. Now, a low close rate is never isolated to closing. Okay. That's, a fact. Okay. It's not just your sales skills. Okay. Because I know plenty of people who don't need massively incredible sales skills. Maybe I'm not as good at sales as I think, but because of my content, my post-booking process, okay, because of the pre-frame, my close rate goes up. And so it's almost always either an ICP problem, you're not speaking to the right people, a messaging problem, they don't really understand what you do, a qualification problem in terms of, they're not qualified, they don't have the finances, a show rate in terms of people aren't showing up, so you're not closing as many of the calls that you're booking, and you're going, we're booking all these calls, why aren't we closing any of them? Half of them aren't even showing up. Offer clarity problem, as I said, you're not making it clear as day what you do and how you do it and what they're going to actually benefit. Or it's a trust problem. And a lot of the trust problem comes to your post-booking process and your pre-frame. How have you built trust up before they've hopped on the call? Okay, through social proof, through testimonials, okay? And so those are the core things to focus on. Now, that's still working. Okay, moving on to module 6. This is client to activated. Okay, so the dangerous window is 0 to 14 days after payment. This is where churn begins. Buyer's remorse is seeded. A client does not become valuable when they pay. Okay, they become valuable when they activate. Now, I think a good thing to think about is a lot of people, they'll get that payment and they sit back and they're like, oh, okay, we did it. We got paid. All right, now we can relax. Wrong. Okay, the moment someone pays is the moment that the pressure is all on you and the expectation is all on you. And so something that we really focus on is the very first call that we have. It's the first thing they book. As immediately after they pay, they book a call, they enter a client portal, immediate quick win, immediate next step. And then on that kickoff call, we over deliver massively. We give them so much value immediately, and we have tons of stuff already set out ahead of that kickoff call to show them. For example, landing pages we'll already have built by the time you're on the kickoff call, which is often the next day. Okay, we'll already have a clearly mapped out ICP document, a clearly mapped out strategy for the next 3 months. We will have reverse engineered your target goal, which we will have assessed on the sales call. And so by the time that people show up to that first call, churn isn't even a problem. And I have never dealt with churn. I run 3 to 6 month programs. We have never had someone not finish it for the sake of not wanting to. It literally stops being an issue when you just over deliver from the start, because you completely remove all of those fears and worries of like, is this actually going to be the real thing? By just showing them that it's even better than the real thing or better than what they imagined within that first call. Okay, and so that's a real big focus. And the last thing you want people to do, especially if you're about to start delivering a service and helping them get results, is be worried or be remorseful that they paid you, because those are the worst clients, okay, I promise you. All right, so in terms of onboarding pipeline, let's check. Yep, this is pretty much everything that we do. Payment confirmed. So as soon as that payment comes through, you should have an automation where they receive one link that is your onboarding process. Okay. We also get an internal notification in Slack so that we know this person has been onboarded. Here are the details. We then have a VA who will go and action all of the next steps in terms of account setup, shared drive setup, one-to-one channels, software access, etc. Okay. And so As soon as we've got that, they then get a welcome email that basically, explains the next steps, gives them the confirmation of the payment, which is good as well, and then also sends them to the onboarding portal. And so through this, there's pretty much just a couple steps. Number one, they submit an onboarding form. Within that onboarding form, we're collecting tons of useful information, because the best information you will get for marketing is from your existing clients. So we ask, why did you go with us? Where did you find us? What stood out about us? What were the core pains that you were focusing on? Why did you choose this program to fix that? What made us different to the other solutions? What revenue at? Like, really understanding your actual ideal customer profile, because those are the people that have paid you. And so we get all of the impact from them, and then that, feeds back into content. Okay. Once we've got that, they then get redirected to book their kickoff call. Okay. They book their kickoff call. They also get follow-ups to make sure they show up to that kickoff call prepared. And again, we get into the program with the ball rolling. Then they get access to the client portal, where there's, dashboards, channels, training resources, tons of stuff that they can start going through in between us speaking on the sales call and the kickoff call. Because the last thing I want them to do is be in that period with nothing, because they've just paid me and now they're like, well, I don't have anything to show for it. I want to have something tangible that they can go and look through to keep them occupied and nurtured up until we're on that kickoff call and we actually get started. Okay. Then first quick win delivered. We define on that kickoff call the very next steps for the next 7 days and exactly what we should get done. And this gives the kind of impression of momentum and lets people know, like, we're already moving. Okay. We're already going. Okay. And that again reduces the kind of anxiety and fear of, is this what I wanted? Okay. So in terms of benchmarks, payment to welcome, it's got to be immediate. Onboarding form completion, 100%. Fuck that. Shouldn't be 95%. Kickoff show rate, 100%. I haven't had a single client not show up. And then activation within 14 days by design. So again, depending on your business, doesn't necessarily have to be, we're getting you to $1 million a month in the next 3 days, otherwise you don't pay. Okay, it doesn't have to be some bullshit like that. What it needs to be is a clear set of next steps. It just has to be clarity of, like, here's the progress that we're making, here's the next steps. Okay, that's all you need. Okay, so moving on, module 7. Okay, this is fulfilled to proof to LTV. Now this is where businesses actually grow. Okay, believe it or not, my business does not grow when someone pays me on a sales call. My business grows when I get someone through the entire program, they have a brilliant experience, we do a full 30-minute client interview, and then I run that as an ad. That's where my business grows. Full transparency, that is where we make the majority of our money, where we get the majority of our clients. The very first testimonial video that I posted it on YouTube. It got, I want to say, 400 views. That video alone probably brought me an additional 15K in revenue. Just one video, 400 views, 15K. Let me know another channel that can actually do that. Okay, and then again, if we're running on ads, I'm not even considering the ads. That's just from the YouTube video directly. But in terms of running the ads, again, that's something that can bring us hundreds of thousands. And so don't focus on that initial price. Focus on, this is the starting point. This person has initially paid me, let's say they've initially paid me 6K. How can I now work really hard over the duration of us working together to make that person worth 20K? Okay, because they're going to bring a friend, they're going to invite someone else, they're going to leave me a testimonial, they're going to buy something else, they're going to come back for another 3 months. Okay, all of these different examples. If your delivery is right, that will do a lot of the legwork for you, and suddenly you don't need as many clients. Okay, so getting into it. In terms of the KPIs, we're looking at efficiency, so milestone completion rate, what percentage of your clients actually reach the milestone. Thing that we do that might be useful to some of you guys at home is in the kickoff call and our very first call, we actually outline what does success look like for you at the end of the program. And this is different for everyone, bear in mind. But if we're identifying what is your definition of success, we now have a kind of North Star to work towards. We have a target where it's like, if we reach this target, there's no way that you can't say that you're happy and that you're satisfied, because that is what you outlined as success. And I've had people say 10K in revenue. I've had people say 5K in revenue. I've had people say $1 million in revenue in 6 months. And I had to say, okay, it's doable. Let's set a slightly lower target first. Okay, you get the point, right? Regardless, it doesn't really matter. And I'm never going to turn away a goal. But the key is that if we have that goal, and as long as we're working towards that and we're aligning everything that we do with that goal, you're going to have a happy client. Okay. Then we've got percentage of delivery automated. So in terms of moving your clients through a standard process for delivery, you want to automate as much of it as possible. And it's not like every single part can be automated. If you're hopping on one-to-one calls, that can't be automated. But what can be automated is a message going out to them saying, book your one-to-one call for this week. Okay, and then a Slack notification that sends the preparation for that call and a clear structure for that call that you don't have to think about, you just go through. Okay, and so the key is that you streamline it so that every client gets the consistent experience, and that way, majority of clients get the result they desire. Okay, then we've got revision and error rate. So how many times do we actually have to redo things? How many times do we make mistakes? Okay, and that should be as low as possible. And then time to outcome. How long does it actually take us to get our clients the result? For us, it's normally about a month and a half until they get the first result. That's brilliant for us because all we have to do is work with the client for a month and we've already got a gleaming testimonial because they will have messaged us saying, first client signed or, client signed today. And that's a very kind of quick turnaround of client comes in, a month later, they're on my story with a result. That's brilliant marketing for us, okay? Then client success, obviously you've got adoption and usage rate, outcome achieved, retention in terms of how many people actually stay with you. For us, at the end of every single program, we do a client interview. I don't think a lot of people can do this, by the way, but every single one of our clients that we have worked with leaves a full 30-minute interview with us. So far, every single person has done it. They all have great things to say, and then we post them on YouTube. It's an absolute brilliant signal for us. And then at the end of that, we pitch basically all of them on another 3 months to handle a different set of problems. And so far, I would say about 50% of people end up renewing, okay, which again, brilliant signal for us. A lot of the time we've handled so many problems that they want to just keep going for a little bit on their own and, just make the money. And then when they've made a bunch, they've seen a really great return from the first, set of months. And then it's like, why would they not come back for another and get a bigger return? Okay. So then we want the proof capture system. This is kind of what I've been talking about. Proof should not be a lucky bonus. It is a stage in the system. Okay. It's triggered, structured, and deployed. Okay. So again, milestone triggered review request. You don't want to ask at random times. You want to have it systemized within that client journey. So for example, every single time a client gets a result, that's when we ask for the testimonial, because what better time to ask someone to leave a review when they're gleaming and they're super happy with the service, okay? Likewise, case study interview process for us, end of the first 3 months, every single time. After the last call, we go, great, we're going to invite you to another call where you get a free 30-minute consulting session in return for a 30-minute client interview, okay? It's a fair process for both of us. Then we've got before and after. The reason we do a kickoff call is because we get a full before snapshot. So we get a full understanding of where they are. And then in the case study, we get a full understanding of where they are now. And we can actually see this is where they were, this is where they got to. Here's the clear transformation. Again, great marketing, something we can now showcase. Okay, approval and repurposing flow. All that means is the editing, is the getting it live and the publishing. Okay, and where do we put it? For us, we put it on our YouTube. We have a dedicated page where we put carousels on Instagram, and then we have my story sequences on Instagram at Samson AI if you haven't checked it out already. So, testimonial capture rate, I would say aim for around 70%. For us, we aim for 100% just because everyone loves it. Okay, not biased at all, obviously. But for the most part, you need to be getting testimonials from most people because that will be a bigger driver of your business than just reaching out to new people. It will be the words from your existing people that actually convert people. Then obviously LTV expansion. How do we increase the lifetime value of our clients? Retention and renewal have kind of steady progress in terms of how do we sell people more. It's called an Ascension pathway. So you want to basically understand when someone initially pays us, what is the pathway to them paying us more? And if you don't have that mapped out, then they're never going to. McDonald's, great example. Their Ascension pathway would look like this. Customer walks in, asks for a burger. Would you like chips? Buys chips. Okay, and what sauce would you like? Buys sauce. Okay, and what drink are you going to get? Buys a drink. Okay, great. They just wanted a burger, and now through the Ascension pathway that we've trained the sales rep with, they've now bought a whole lot more. And so apply that same methodology to your business. Understand what do people initially buy for the most part, what do we sell, and how can we have a set of stages after that that we sell more of. A great thing with my kind of service is we have software. So for example, we're launching a software platform at the moment. Currently it's free for our clients. Long term, it will be part of our Ascension pathway in terms of people sign up, they join the core program, then throughout they want to expand maybe via this channel. We recommend our own software because we know that it's the best for that certain purpose, and we say, this software is perfect for it. It's cheaper than these competitors. Here's the price of it. We now have an upsell. Okay, great way to do it. Upsell, cross-sell. Best way to understand what you might upsell is just think about what problem do I solve? Once I've solved that problem, what's the next problem? What's the next thing that they still need fixed? For example, if you fix lead flow as a problem and you run paid ads, okay, first thing that you do is you solve that problem, they now have consistent lead flow. Next problem that they realize they've now got is managing that lead flow and staying consistent with outreach. Okay, now you solve that problem as an upsell. And so for all of the people that you solve that problem for, now they have lead flow. As soon as they've got that, you step in at the right time and say, now that you've got consistent lead flow, we want to make sure you're converting it. What I'd like to offer you is this new system that we have in place that we're implementing to make sure that you track all of the leads effectively and that you follow up with them all on time. That's now something super attractive upsell. It wouldn't even feel like an upsell. It would just feel like a natural next step. And that's kind of how you want it to be. Then we've got referral program. When you've got happy clients, have an incentive for them to bring you new happy clients. If you've got 10 clients right now and you want to make a little bit of extra cash, easiest way you can do that is go to your 10 clients and don't ask do ask, but don't ask as in like, oh, please, would you be able to request and say, hey, I've got a quick request for you. Can I get 3 people's emails or phone numbers that you think would also benefit from this service? If any of them end up signing up, we'll pay you out £300. Sound good? Everyone will do that if they've had a great experience. Then we've got reactivation, re-engage past clients systematically. So, for example, you had someone who worked great together, keep them in the loop. I like to keep everyone in the same ecosystem, which is why we have a client portal, a community portal. We have software that people get access to for life, and so they're going to be on that for life. What this does is it keeps everyone in one place, keeps everyone in my ecosystem. And so even after 6 months of not working together, I can still reach back out and say, how's things going, right? How are you getting on? And if there's any problems and any things that aren't going great, maybe they might want to work with you again. And it happens time and time again. Okay, so if we now actually look at the weekly operator dashboard, which is kind of the next step, this is what you need to be tracking, okay? And I know that this is a lot, and I'm not saying that it's easy to track all of this, okay? But it is if you have the right softwares. Hint, hint, we're currently building an entire software platform that allows you to track every single one of these numbers, so keep an eye out for that. And if you're interested, DM me on Instagram with the word completely, and I'll see if I can give you a kind of insight. Now, in terms of tracking, we want to look at the top of funnel. So we want to track our reach, okay? So think of all of this as a pipeline. We go from reach to profile visits, to content, to lead, ad to lead. These are the conversion rates. Then we've got cost per click. So how much is it costing us if we're spending on ads? That's everything that we track in terms of ads. Then we've got leads. So for your lead pipeline, you want to have all the new leads coming in. How many of those are qualified? What's your cost per lead in terms of how much you're spending? What's our speed per lead? How quickly are we getting back to them? What's our response rate? Okay, then we've got booking to show. Right, in terms of the people that respond, how many of our leads turn to bookings? How many of our qualified leads turn to bookings? How many of the bookings actually show up? How many of the no-shows do we actually recover? And then what's the actual no-show rate as a whole? Okay, and so this gives us the understanding of every single little minute detail. Then we've got the sales layer. So we've got how many people show up in regards to how many people actually close. So the show to close conversion. Then we've got the cash collected. So in terms of are people paying in full or are people paying by payment plans? Again, that can help you adjust your qualification. Maybe you need to change your sales process, add in some more pre-framing in terms of pre-handling those objections of paying in full. Okay, sales cycle, understand how long is your sales cycle. Okay, and then close by source, understand where do your leads actually come from, where does the majority, a pie chart for this is going to make your life easy. And then you also want to understand what are the reasons that we lost them, what are the objections, what are the things that are stopping people from buying from us when they show up on a call. Okay, take all of those, re-put them into your marketing, re-put them into your ads, put them into your post-booking process, right? Retarget people who have booked a call with objection handles for these objections, okay? And you'll see those lost reasons disappear. And you just keep on doing that until every single objection under the sun is gone. And by the way, they'll never all disappear. There'll always be new ones that you can add. So yeah, something to think about. Now, onboarding, moving on, we've then got time to welcome, got form completion, kickoff show rate, activation rate, time to first win. I would say arguably this is the most important one. If you're actually running a legitimate business, you're not going to really need to worry about onboarding. Most people that pay you want to get onboarded, believe it or not. But what's really important is understanding how long does it take for us to actually get them a result, and how does that play into our marketing strategy. Okay, then we've got fulfillment, the time to outcome, as I said, the milestone completion, you've got the churn risk, and also just the churn percentage, what percentage of people churn. You've got the CSAT score, and then we've got the delivery bottleneck. So what in delivery is actually constraining us? What is the thing that takes the most amount of time? That should be something that you're always focusing on in terms of how can I reduce the input required to deliver the result. And then you've got the delivery bottleneck, which you always need to understand. You want to understand, where are we constrained in delivery? What is stopping us from taking on 100 clients tomorrow in delivery? That's always an exercise that I like to do. Could you take on 20 clients tomorrow? If the answer is no, then maybe it's something to do with your delivery, and it's not actually as systemized as it should be, because the more standardized and systemized your delivery is, the more people will get the result, the more people you can take on, and you're actually doing your clients a favor, because the more productized it is, you can make it cheaper, more accessible, more valuable, because you can add more to it now that you have more time and more kind of scope expanded. And so always be thinking about, how can I make it easier for me to deliver this same result? And that's something you should always be working on. Then we've got the LTV layer. So how many people renew? how many people upsell, how many people give us a referral, what's the average client lifespan, so how long do people stay with us, and what's the net LTV. So what is the net lifetime value? And now these are the key ratios, LTV to CAC, okay? So the lifetime value of one client against the cost of acquiring that client. Because when it comes to scaling and ensuring that you remain profitable, think about it like this. If a client pays £100 initially, okay, then maybe in your head, you're like, right, I mean, in terms of keeping our margin, we can only spend £50 to acquire that client. And so you're not going to spend very much on ads, and you're going to keep your spend low, thinking that you can't scale like that. But that's because you don't know your LTV. Because let's say maybe the initial purchase, you actually lose money on, and you spend £100 to acquire a £100 client. But it turns out that 50% of those people actually then end up buying your your $5,000 program or your $10,000 program. And suddenly your LTV per client is $3,000, right? And now you can actually spend $1,000 to acquire that client and still be profitable. And so that's the kind of like shift that you need to think about, is once you understand this ratio, you will understand how much can I comfortably spend on marketing to acquire one client and still be profitable. And that is ultimately how you scale. Okay, then you've got the CAC payback. So in terms of the cost of acquisition, how long does it take for that client to pay off the cost that it was to acquire them? And then you've got to understand, do people on average actually stay with us that long in order to pay that off? Because otherwise you're not going to be profitable. Then we've got gross LTV. So yeah, again, lifetime, how much is someone worth? Revenue expansion, how are we expanding via these LTV kind of layers? And then we've got the reactivation rate, how many people come back around, okay? What percentage of people come back around? And this will give you a full insight into every single stage of your business from start to finish. And just by understanding these key ratios, you'll be able to understand, do I have a profitable business? Can I spend more on marketing? Is this gonna still work when I'm at, let's say your goal is $1 million a month? Is this business model still gonna be functional if I'm making $1 million a month? Or could this work at $1 million a month? And that's a big part of why we wanna map this all out. And so the way I look at business, it's really just this one master equation. Okay, we've got reach times lead conversion times booking conversion times show rate times close rate times retention, and that is what equals your growth quality. Okay, and so the wrong question to ask is, how do I get more leads? Because I promise you, I know so many people who get so many views and so much reach and do not make any money because they're not factoring in the other parts of this equation. And so the correct question is, where is the highest value transition currently breaking? And that is the only place that you spend your time on. Okay, so don't you fix the bottleneck before increasing the volume. Because if you increase the volume and all of these conversion rates are still poor, then you're just adding more fire to the mix, and the more you spend, the less profitable you're going to be. And this is the cycle that people fall into. So identify the bottleneck first by tracking your numbers and understanding what these look like for your business. Then understand, where do I spend my time in order to increase the volume and that actually bring the business a positive result. And so the operator principle that I like to follow is, if business relies on first sale revenue alone, growth will always feel fragile. And so in terms of kind of final closing remarks, I want you guys to just have a look at, these are some of the critical transition failures. These are things that people always miss out on. I just want you to be aware of. Good content, bad conversion. Brilliant if you capture attention, but what's the point if it doesn't bridge to the next stage? A good hook is only good if it captures the attention, not of everyone, but of your actual target market. So that's one. Bookings with weak show rates. People think they've booked a call and that's, the be all end all. That's an issue as well. Leads with no follow-up. You get leads, you think you've won, you don't follow up with them, half of them end up disappearing. Sales with a weak onboarding. You close the deal, but then have a terrible onboarding process, unprofessional, and suddenly these clients are doubting whether they should work with you, feel unconfident going into the delivery, and then end up churning, okay? Fulfillment with no proof capture. You deliver a great result, you never document it, you never have anything to use for marketing, you don't have the social proof to put into your post-booking process to increase your close rate, to put into your content to increase your close rate, etc. And so that's something that people also miss. And then happy clients with no LTV system. Clients that tell you you've done a great job and you don't do anything to capture that lifetime value through referrals, recommendations, and reviews, etc. So that's probably the core ones that I would say 99% of people need to fix first. So focus on these first, then go back through the video and fix the rest. Then kind of mental model to think about, and this is just like another kind of analogy and way of thinking about it, is strangers are planes in the sky, okay? They're unknown, they're untracked. Okay, leads are planes entering airspace. They're now on the radar and we know who they are and we can see them. Booked calls are planes cleared to land, okay? Intent is confirmed, they're planning to land. Clients are planes on the runway. They've landed, we've collected payment. Fulfillment is ground handling, okay? We stop, we park, we're good, and we have the outcome. And then LTV is back in rotation, okay? And that's when they're actually getting back to the sky because they're profitable, they're predictable, and they still work, okay? Most founders grow the airport by attracting more planes. While the runway is blocked, ground staff are confused, and the tower has no visibility. So more traffic just compounds this failure, makes it worse, and everything's going to explode. Whereas structure makes traffic useful. So fix the runway, train the ground crew, give the tower visibility, then and only then do you add volume, okay? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this in a Google Doc And so what I'm going to do is I'm now going to leave this funnel audit in the link below. And what you can actually do is go through, map all of these out, note your volume, your conversion rate, the time in the stage, the owner of the system, and the failure point. And if you understand this, literally you have full clarity on how to turn strangers into fulfilled for clients and LTV. Strangers to LTV the entire way, okay? And so I want you to go through, map this out for your business, and then actually figure out what is the priority, what needs to be fixed first, because you are probably spending all of your time going, this is what I think the problem is, so I'm going to spend all my time here. Like the amount of people who I see spend all of their time, they're like, I just need to create more content, more content. And I'm like, how do you even know that's the issue? How do you even know that you don't have enough content or enough views already to make money? You don't, because you're not tracking it. You have no idea. And so go through this exercise, map it out, ask yourself, where does the highest value transition currently break? Not how do I get more leads, but ask, where does each stage convert and how do I fix that transition? Okay, that should be your priority. And this will be super useful if you actually go through and do it. It will take you 15 minutes max. Do not underestimate the power of this. And so final kind of closing statement is this is the 3 steps that you can take right now to immediately grow your business. Map your actual journey. Use the 9-row diagnostic that I've put in the slide before. Every stage, honest numbers. Step 2, identify the highest leaking transition. Where is business leaking? You've got some kind of traffic coming in if you run a business. Where is it leaking and falling out and not making it to a fulfilled for client? Step 3, fix that before chasing volume. And so I guess the final takeaway from this video is that you got to understand that most founders are still trying to grow a business that they cannot see, and that's why it feels heavy, and that's why the founder becomes the rooter. And so don't make that mistake, because the answer is not more hustle, it's not more tools, it's definitely not playing around with Claude Code for 3 hours on a Sunday, okay? Follow these 3 steps, okay? Because stranger to call is not the business, call to client is not the business, client to fulfilled to LTV is the business. And when that journey is designed properly, growth stops feeling chaotic and it starts feeling predictable. And so if this video has been valuable in any way, shape or form, and you actually want to implement the type of systems that allow you to track every single stage of your customer journey down to the most minute detail and know exactly where things are breaking, then please take a look in the description. Don't take it from me. Please look at all of the testimonials and client interviews that we've got recorded. Have a look at those and then use the other link to book a call with myself or a member of my team, and we'll speak soon.